Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Citizens of Lorcana podcast, a podcast where we invite you to be a part of their world. Today, we are talking about Lorcana game design with an expert. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Hey everyone, welcome to another week. Last week we had a chance to visit with Katie from Lore Keepers Inn, which was a great conversation. She talked all about Disney Lorcana, the theme parks, building a community. If you haven't had a chance, go check it out. And this week, we are super duper excited because this is something I've been waiting for a very long time. We have a very special guest, somebody you may know. I'm pleased to introduce the one, the only Mr. Steve Warner. Steve, how's it going, friend?
How's it going?
Oh, good. We're so excited to have you here. We were talking about this before we got on air. How long? We've known you since Gamma, and we're like, I would love to have Steve on the podcast, and today is that day.
Yeah, I remember we were stuck playing Lorcana like at 2 a.m. after all the tests, and we still wanted to play more. So that was a fun night.
That was a great night, yeah.
James and I reference that all the time on this podcast as being a core memory and a highlight of our Lorcana journey. I mean, someday, like 30 years down the road, when Lorcana is still going, we're going to be able to look back and we're like, yeah, we played Lorcana with Steve Warner in the hotel lobby at 1 a.m. at Gamma.
Now, I have forgotten. I can finally kind of point something out about those games that we played at Gamma. Do you remember much of it?
A little bit.
Remember the mode we played? Have you played Ursula's Return yet? The Illumineer's Quest?
Yes.
Do you remember how you played that and how we played then?
Two players who each had to get up to 20 lore against two players who each had to get up to 20 lore. So that's what, as the co-op team, you have to get each up to 20 lore.
Yep. You guys were secretly my test subjects for a
nice. That's awesome.
There you go.
I finally get to admit it now. So.
I love it. Oh, also, I'm a terrible co-host here because I forgot to mention we are joined by Adara. Thank you for joining us today, Adara. We are super excited to have you here. So, I think it would be really neat if we took a deep dive into the design of Lorcana because you're somewhat of an expert. So, first of all, because to me, it's unfathomable how Lorcana or any game can come out with with a set every 3 months. Like, that blows my mind. And second, I think it'll help people appreciate just what exactly goes into creating a new set for Lorcana. So, we've heard time and time again that the first 3 to 4 sets were designed at the same time, but now that Lorcana has been out for almost a year, are they still designed in those chunks of 3 to 4, or do you take them one set at a time?
Well, I kind of let a little bit of the cat out of the bag there with explaining the Illumineer's Quest was being tested. Designed, no. Developed, yes. And the difference is that we'll design sets one at a time, but development, which is where they go over everything and make sure that it's fair and fun and thematic, that takes a bit longer of a process when it comes to how you fit those sets in. And so those sets were being developed all at the same time, but they were designed separately. We always, of course, tried to design things to kind of look back at previous cards and look forward to future cards so that people can have fun finding the neat little combos that we put in the way. But they're designed pretty much by set.
I'm still waiting for the Gantu redemption arc.
He'll come
someday.
So if I understand what you're saying, you have like a roadmap, and then it's just a matter of like plugging in the pieces. Like you have a general idea of what you want to go, but not like concrete exact things.
So it's a very intricate process, I will say. There's a lot of discussion between our narrative team, our marketing team, game design, creative, that all happens well before anything gets moving. And we kind of figure out where the story is going to be, what our plans are, what the story was for the previous set. And we work on what would be fun mechanics for that sort of storyline. And with that in mind, we'll go through and do a little bit of creative research where we figure out like how best to use these mechanics, what we think would be good. We present them to narrative and marketing, and we're like, hey, we think this will work. This will be good. They say, sure, sounds good. We'll put it in the story. We try it out. Usually it falls flat on its face. And we have a lot of patching up to do. And then, we'll find something that's a lot more fun, and the devs will take it from there.
That's I mean, that's different than how I thought. I assumed that like you just designed the cards, the abilities, and then the narrative team like worked from there based on what you developed. But the fact that there's this interplay between what you design and what the narrative team is looking for, I think that's pretty cool. Like, and it helps. I mean, one thing you can say about Lorcana is it's very thematic, both in the abilities and like each set has a specific theme. That's one of the things I really love about it, and that definitely comes through.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important things in general, because Disney is so much about storytelling, right? And so having this story be the kind of guide in front of us is just, it wouldn't be Disney without something like that.
I know I'm talking a lot here, but I just have to drop one thing. We had Katie from the Lore Keepers in on our podcast last week, and she said something that like has stuck with me ever since then. She said the thing she loves about Disney Lorcana is you get to have a Disney experience anywhere in the world. Like you don't have to go to a theme park, you don't have to go to a Disney store. You can go to your local game store or at your kitchen table, and you can have a Disney experience. And I feel like you guys have done such a good job of capturing that essence and the magic of Disney. So, bravo.
Appreciate it.
So before we get like super into the weeds of game design and all that, I want to take a side route here to ask you, do you get to play Lorcana in your free time, or do you only play it at work?
I do try to get to play it in my free time. Free time and work time are very much similar. So it's kind of like on the weekends I'll try to go to leagues and play against people there, and it's can be a challenge sometimes because there's always a lot of other things going on as well. But yeah, we get to play, and especially when I get to go to events, that's my favorite time, because I get to build a bunch of decks and show up and just have people line up and start playing me, and I can play a couple hundred games that way over a weekend and be very happy.
And then that's just the easy way for you to do, as Ryan says, to crush 100 greens, right?
That is definitely a great way to get 100 games in. That's for sure.
Do you like get a badge, like a pin, when somebody beats you?
Do I get a pin, or do they get
like at Ravensburger when you're playtesting and somebody beats you? Are they given like a pin?
No, they have to beat me to get hired in the first place. I mean, no, because especially the way that development works. I mean, we play so many games, we build so many different decks. I fully anticipate people will beat me. We have a great game development team that plays a lot, and so they're really up on what to do when there's a lot of strategy involved. And then, when they beat me, I can just change the cards, and it works great.
I just can't get this image out of my head of like you standing like those chess masters who will play like multiple opponents at once. So you just have like multiple decks that you're running and all these people like taking their turns against you. I know it's not what you do, but I can't get that image out of my head.
That would be a fun one for an event, though. I would love to do that at an event. Not with the blindfold. That I would knock over everything. But
no blindfold. You get to see what your hand is. You get to do everything normal. You just have to play multiple opponents at once.
Funny enough, I did do that when I was in chess club before. Like, I enjoy that sense of having to reevaluate the boards every time you get to the new board, and so it's a great way.
Yeah, I think Ravensburger hired the right man for this job.
Yeah, Ryan's great.
Both of you.
Well, you already hinted at it a little bit, Steve, but some of the characters definitely have abilities that just feel like they were made to go with the character. I think like that prime example we always come back to is that Ariel voiceless from the very first set, that she can't sing songs. She is voiceless, and it feels like it was just slotted in for that character. So for you personally, do you enjoy that kind of design of where you get to do thematic things along with characters, or are you much more of just like a pure mechanics kind of guy, and then the characters and how they get matched up come afterwards?
We very much line up the character to the ability beforehand. We build for the character for the most part. There are times where sets in design, we will say to ourselves, well, we sort of need this sort of ability, right? For example, grab your swords is a great example of this, where we just kind of needed something that could deal damage to all the characters. And grab your sword seemed like it would be a good fit for that type of effect. But that's sort of kind of mechanically bottom up, where you find the mechanic and you kind of build in the theme onto it. With Ariel, we knew that it was going to be an Ariel, right? And so I was like, well, it'd be fun to just have her in her human form, but she can't speak, so she clearly can't sing, right? And so we were able to add that, and that's how we do a lot of the design for the characters, is that what's referred to as top down. And so we know what the character is. We kind of have an idea of where we're taking that character from, either Storyborn or Dreamborn or Floodborn. And then we can kind of craft the story on the card that way and try to hit those thematic points.
That's great. I love it. And you can definitely see that show through on a lot of the cards. Okay, so I want to ask you, when you are asked to design a new set, like, I don't even know what that process looks like. I imagine, like, set 4 just released and you're already, several sets ahead. Who knows how far? But first of all, like, do you get like a breather between sets? But after that breather, like, what does that process look like?
Well, I find it funny that you think that they ask me to work on the next set.
Okay.
It's just expected, right? Like, you get done with one, you go into the next, and it's a process, and we've come a long way, and there's a lot of learning curves for us, and growing pains and things. But you get into kind of that groove of getting the set done, getting it to the next team that will take good care of it, working on the next thing, and kind of building that in. But there's a lot of back and forth, especially between the two teams, right? Because you'll have one team that says, oh, well, we could use something like this, or we need this sort of ability to make this fun, or this gameplay isn't quite there, right? We want something a little bit more. And so that's where that kind of looking back at cards will come into play. That's where that looking forward into play will happen. So it's kind of an ever moving process with that big gear turning and all the little gears turning around it. But it doesn't stop. And we're happy when we can get the next set of cards in, start working on those. And for us, it's kind of the same sort of thing that the public gets to look at, right? We just are a little further ahead. We get to see that next set and we're like, yay, we've got all these cool things coming in. Like, this is awesome. And so it's just a different type of Christmas for us.
I had never thought of it that way before. Now, when you say the two teams, you're talking about the design team and the narrative team. Are those the two teams?
So I'm referring to design and development. And
okay.
So it's all game dev, but design are the ones that make the cards scary and exciting. Development team's job is to make them balanced and fun and thematic and less scary.
and which team specifically are you on?
I am on both, actually.
Okay. That makes sense.
I bounce around to make sure that sort of the vision is there, and that the way things, I would like to see things kind of come through. But I do have two really good teams between design and development that help do a lot of the work now.
So you were talking about, like, you have themes, you have like the different teams will say we want this or we want that. So, like, okay, this last set there's a lot of a lot of Ursula, and the set before that was Encanto. Is that like part of the roadmap? Like, this set we're going to introduce Encanto. This set we're going to do Little Mermaid.
Yeah, there is a little bit of discussion. I had that part where I said where narrative and marketing get together and kind of come together with a story, because we don't want to just throw franchises in just because we can. We kind of want there to be a reason that they're there. And so each franchise kind of has a different reason for belonging. And so we know in advance when they're gonna hit, but there's a lot more effort put into when that happens.
Makes sense. Like you get the sandbox of we want you to work on the Madrigal family and develop like abilities and stuff that synergize with each other. I mean, I think it's really cool. I like that approach. I actually really like that approach.
Yeah, it helps from a design point of view too. I know there's different trains of thought, but for me at least, if you give me a couple boundaries, I can build out so many more things than if you just say it's all available to you, and then it's like, well, I don't know what to do. There's so many. So
I have heard that a lot from artists and creative people that some boundaries are a good thing to help like define where they can and can't break the rules.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily just break the rules, but get something created within that framework. Having a frame. I mean, painters, they have the canvas. There's just not like painting wherever they want, right? So yeah, I get that. So in getting into when you are just starting at the beginning, and you're talking about the cards and, like I said, when you're bringing in Encanto, how do you get translating the theory of that into the application? So how do you get what the things you're thinking about into and onto cards?
Well, a lot of the time we start with watching the movie.
Nice.
And it's always funny because saying that we watch the movie for work is always kind of hilarious. It's really tough. It's really hard. But we take a lot of notes when we do that. We have the whole team together. We take notes. We list the characters, the background characters. We list lines that we think are popular, songs, lyrics, all those sorts of things that we think could be something really cool. And if we have time while we're writing things down, we'll write down kind of an idea of what this could do, right? And so when we get done with that and we kind of compile all those notes, we start building out. Well, yeah, Maribel is she doesn't have a lot of powers. Like she in a way, her bringing her family together and helping them is her power. So she's got a vanilla card and she's got her card that uh, is a little bit different. I don't want to. So you'll have to forgive me. Sometimes I kind of get lost in which cards I'm thinking about, and I'm like, is this a card that I can talk about? Or
There's one that has support out there.
Yeah,
Yep.
and which
there's
is
one
very very much her style, right? She's great at helping her family out, and so support makes sense for her. When it
and she has one that gives other lore to the rest of the family.
Yeah, and so her helping her family was always the biggest part of her character, or at least what we felt. And so we liked the whole Madrigal family working together to kind of build each other up a bit more.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Okay, but sorry, go ahead, Adara.
I was just going to say, and that led to a really great themed experience in the starter deck too. So that paid off there of the card design coming together and having that really fun theme of a deck to play right out of the bat.
It's amusing. I just had Shane Hartley actually message me, and he just encountered that deck. His daughter just creamed him with it. So it's always great to hear that.
So I want to know who the person was when you were watching The Great Mouse Detective that was like, Mouse Armor. That's a good card. That's a good card. Like you were talking about watching movies to get ideas for cards. That is one that I would probably watch The Great Mouse Detective a million times and never think that would be a great card. No fun.
There's always the background stuff that's kind of fun to bring in because people then get a chance to rewatch it and see if they can find it, or they'll look it up and find out where exactly it was in the movie. And those are always neat.
It's exactly what we did. Yeah, that's exactly what we did when we watched it a couple months ago. We're like, I was watching it, and then when it came by, I'm like, there, look, pause, look, there it is. It's the Mouse Armor.
That's so much fun.
What about the Lorcana, the cards that are unique to Lorcana, like the Starlight Vial?
So in some ways, those come from a narrative perspective on we have a team that is dedicated to world building. And so they have maps and designs and schematics of everything you can think about when it comes to Lorcana. It's expansive,
I
right?
want to
And
go there. I want to see this.
maybe one day, but they have this great world, and they've thought about all these things, and it's how narrative can really function to build a great story that's going on in our world. And it allows us to kind of pick and choose some things where it's like, oh, that's really cool. Like they'll show images of, here's how these things happen inside the Illuminary. And we'll see something and be like, oh, what's that? What's that do? Like, what's the purpose? And that can help us come up with kind of a cool card that we can create that can be used for Lorcana, inside Lorcana, and kind of help show what the world looks like and show that the world is much larger than just the what everyone sees. Like there's everything outside of that too.
I think I've discovered the location of the Great Illuminary.
Well, so that's a lot of fun to get those ideas from just like that space of idea onto actual cards. But then obviously these cards have to be tested, and you've already talked a little bit about that. So what does that kind of look like once the cards are out? What does that kind of look like for getting these cards tested?
So after they leave design, they go into development. And development, we kind of give them a rundown of here's all the cards, here's the ideas that we had for these themes. Here's this new mechanic. This is how it works. This is how it's supposed to work. And here's what we're kind of hoping for the set as a whole. And they take that set and then they'll start playing. And within the first couple of days, really, a lot of it will change. Right. There's usually a ton of things that need to kind of be shaken up and put into right positions. There's occasions where stuff like mechanics and keywords don't work quite the way that we were hoping for, or there's a little bit of confusion around them. We've had a number of times where they just outright don't work the way that we were hoping for. And so sometimes stuff will be kicked back to design to kind of readjust so that design can keep a holistic view of the set and make sure things run properly and that the idea is met. But development will continue to keep playing, making suggestions. And our system is they'll put comments into a database for us. And then our leads will go through with their team and they'll figure out, is this, something that we need to change? Is this something that works? Is this, how good or bad this is? And it's all sorts of comments, right? Again, we're not always looking for this is too powerful. Of course, we don't want those cards to exist, but we also want things that are, this isn't really working well. This isn't showing up at all in our play tests, or this card is just not thematic. It's the wrong character for this card.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of detail on the testing. Is it like you guys are actually like shuffling up and playing a full game? You're not just like setting up a scenario and just testing scenarios, right?
No, I find scenario testing to lack some perspective when it comes to that, because I can put 7 cards out there and say it's an unbeatable combo, but getting 7 cards in play at the same time, it's going to be a little bit harder. So it might be really good. It might be really powerful. If all 7 of those cards say, draw a card and play for free, then yeah, it could be really scary. But you really need to have the knowledge of how it feels inside the game. And we do joke from time to time, the combo is fine if you don't draw it, as that comes up quite often. It's not true, and we know it, but it is kind of amusing when we've built a combo deck. I just had a combo deck last week, and for whatever reason, the life of me, I could not draw the combo in 3 separate games. I just saw 0 pieces of it. I actually had to check my deck to make sure I put it in there, just to make sure that it was still there. And it's like, yeah, it's there. I just never drew it.
That's that variance. So when you guys, James said shuffle up. Do you have like a card printer where you're like, I'm going to test this card, and you're like printing them out? Or are you like, drawing on pieces of paper? Like what? How are you guys shuffling up?
We have different methods that I can't go completely into.
That's fair.
But we do have methods. We don't have a card printer as much as I would love to have one. It is a little bit longer of a system. A lot of the time, people will write down specific cards pretty quickly. We have blank cards that we can use, and we have other things that we can use. So it's a bit more of a process than just like entering it into a computer and having a printer like, here's your 60 cards, go. I'd have a lot more else's if that was the case.
So this sounds like it's a pretty iterative process. Like, how do you come to a point when you feel like the card is right?
You never do. And this is true for a lot of designers on a lot of their games, right? You can fidget and fiddle with cards forever, right? You never quite feel that they're completely done. There is a point where someone else will tell you stop touching it, and you have to listen to them, and you'll be done. But there's not really a point where I'm like, yep, we're done, great, next, because not only do you have just that set, but you have all the future stuff coming too. And so, you might feel like you're pretty comfortable with the way something is currently, but then a couple sets down the road, another card comes out, and you're faced with this dilemma of, do you want to try to change something that's just about to come out, or do you change that thing that's over there? Like, which one is better to change? Sometimes the new one, I mean, the new one's usually easier, but sometimes it's better to kind of change that one that you were comfortable with, because it's a better experience for the players.
I will say that's something that, I mean, major kudos to you guys. The fact that when you're designing sets, you are preparing for the future. And even in something as simple as like, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was like, you may choose, I don't know. But like from set one, you were planning with the future in mind. And I think that's really cool. And it speaks to the level of attention and detail that goes into this game.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a number of things. One of my favorite ones was actually the brooms. We had kind of put little breadcrumbs out for a little while, and then we kind of got to pay it off a bit in 4. So I was really happy with how that one turned out. And there's been some other ones that have worked, and some that don't work as well, and that's just the way that it goes.
I still think brooms are like, there's something that I need still in the broom deck that needs to make it like really, really good.
You just need to throw a flounder in there.
Or flounder.
I play against a broom deck at my locals, and it is crazy to see that thing in action.
Yeah, and when it gets rolling, it can really
sweep the competition.
Sweep. Yeah.
Oh.
I was gonna go for the clean sweep, but
oh boy.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of the brooms, obviously one of the fun things is working in the realm of Disney, and incorporating all the themes and elements from Disney media into the game. And there was an interview where you mentioned that, like you had mentioned watching Encanto, but you in an interview you mentioned watching Mulan, and that was specifically what was the inspiration for Strength of a Raging Fire. You talked about it a little bit, but can you go into more detail about watching the movies with an eye towards like translating them from that into the game, and like how specifically you pull those things in to make sure that they fit thematically?
Well, we definitely, in those cases, especially when it comes to the songs, we really want them to feel very thematic. I think that it's very important that those songs show off Disney, right? Disney has a lot of songs and a lot of great songs, and people love them. And so we want to make sure that when they see those cards and they read the text, that they're reminded of the moments in the movies. And so, as I said, we watch, we take a bunch of notes. There's times where we'll note the specific thing and what's happening in the movie, so that we can get an idea. Or, Strength of Raging Fire, I think I had something like perfect damage spell or something along those lines, right? Like, group spell, I think was what I put down. And so it's that note taking, and it's the fact that we all kind of gather up all of those notes and put them together, and so that we're able to kind of go through them and be like, oh, this would really be really cool. And there's, for example, Mulan as a Floodborn. We actually really like the idea of the archery because uh, she learns that in the movie, but it's never really used that much, right? And so it was kind of a fun way to kind of show, well, what if she wasn't a foot soldier? What if she was an archer?
Do you have the coolest job on the planet?
I think so. I'm pretty sure I do. I certainly won't complain.
So I actually, on relation to that, how often has the team like all written down like something very similar or very close from like one specific scene or song or lyric?
It's often, but that's usually because what happens is someone sees it and they call it out. And so everyone starts scribbling it down. There's a lot of jokes that are made while we're doing it, and a lot of cards that get called out as we're doing it, so that you can see if people are nodding their head or like, it's not going to hit. So there are definitely plenty of ones that we write down that people are just like, no, that's not.
I'm just thinking about all the terrible names that James has come up with for like potential card ideas when we brainstorm.
What are you talking about? You mean my deck names?
Yeah. Your deck names.
My deck names are awesome.
Or like when you were going through your list for the names that you had for your team that you guys put together.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff like that. So when Steve was talking about, sometimes we're like, nah. I was imagining James, listing off his list there.
To be fair, naming things is one of the hardest things to do. A little bit of right, like a little bit of peeking behind the curtain. I think we had 3 separate 2-hour meetings of just brainstorming name ideas for Lorcana. We had gone through so many different names, and people would write names down the entire time outside of these meetings. And then we'd get into these meetings and we'd go through this list, and it's like, does this work? Does this work? Like what really feels like this sort of game? We knew the general narrative, we knew the general stories, so we kind of knew what we were going for, but it took forever to come up with a name that we were really happy with.
And now you can't think of it as anything else, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how that works, but yeah, it's very much that way.
Can I just say we need a making of Lorcana documentary? I'm just saying. I'm throwing it out there.
I've tried to do a little bit with the dev diaries on the Discord, but it's a very difficult thing, and I still, to this day, there's a lot of me that is like, well, am I just going to write this and no one's really going to want to read it because it's just like, let me tell you about my life, and I don't. I mean, so I don't know. It would be very cool. I will say that, but maybe we can get Ryan to write it.
That would be so much fun.
We need to get Leslie Iwerks playing Lorcana is what we need.
Playing Lorcana.
She's an awesome documentary maker, so just get her involved, and then all of a sudden it'll just start coming together.
Is that Oob Iwerks like daughter, granddaughter?
I think so. Yeah, granddaughter. I think.
Okay, I mean, there's the Disney connection there.
Well, shifting kind of topics just a tad. In another interview, you had mentioned cards like Maui Hero to All kind of exist to be right on the edge of being too powerful, but not actually overpowered overall. So how do you know when a card is approaching that line of like crossing into this is too much territory?
You cross your fingers and hope. No, there is more to it, but it's that iterative testing, right? The developers have to go through that very carefully and kind of come up with a lot of the situations that people are going to come up with. And I say a lot because there's no way we're going to test as much as people in the world. There's just no way. It's impossible. The first hour that the general public has all of the cards, they've probably done more testing than we could possibly do in the time that we have. So we have to have a lot of really skilled players go through and kind of go, how is it going to work with this? How is it going to work with this? Is this going to be too much? How are all these things going to work? And then we kind of balance that, right? Is Maui going to be too powerful, or is he going to be really strong, but players will have ways to kind of either deal with him or recognize that maybe he's going to be played. And so it's a learning experience for the players, right? On your opponent's turn 5, you do need to be scared of Maui. And so people can play a little bit differently to get around him. The number of times that I've been very cautious about how many characters I play when my opponent's going to 7 ink.
Yep.
We all know that feeling, right? So there's by doing that, you can create different play patterns that allow people to feel like they're more skilled because they've successfully called what their opponent has in hand, or they've played around this thing, or maybe they didn't, but they still feel like they were smart because that was the correct play for them to do. So I think it's very important to have those moments in the game.
It's true.
I love that you bring up the skill. Like, it does make you feel like it. You feel good when you're like, well, I'm not going to do this because I think you have that, and then it turns out they did have that, and that's such a good feeling as a player.
No, I go back to a conversation that James and I had where he was talking about an experience where he's playing against somebody, and you had sudden chill in your hand, right?
You'd have to tell me that. We've talked about so many things.
and you bounce their character back to their hand, and then you sudden chilled it away.
Yeah.
And that was like an aha moment for you. And those are the moments that make Lorcana just amazing.
And then they just gave us We Don't Talk About Bruno to do it all in one card.
That's true. Okay, so I'm still waiting for that card in Sapphire that walks the line, but I'm sure it'll be coming out here soon. So I want to shift gears a little bit here. I want to talk a little bit about the current state of Lorcana. You are kind of like a world traveler these days. We're at a place where we are 4 sets in. We've seen several DLCs now, and I can't wait for Vegas. I'm going to be there. And we've seen the introduction of the Lumineers quest. Like, this game is just growing like crazy, and soon to be the gateway product. Okay, so many people are enjoying this game. Thinking back to when Lorcana was nothing more than just a thought and a dream on the back of a napkin, how do you feel about the current state of Lorcana? Like, it's got to give you goosebumps when you really stop and think about it.
Yeah, I'm not Ryan. I can't give myself goosebumps at will, but I do. I know I use this a lot. It's surreal, right? I did not expect Lorcana to be as huge as it is. I'm grateful that it is, mind you. And I'm happy that so many people are playing and enjoying the game. And I get to see the pictures of a lot of the people with like their kids, and they're like, oh, we just pulled our first Enchanted, and they've got their pictures with their kids. And, oh, we just beat Ursula, for the first time. Like, those moments, I couldn't be more proud of everything that's happened with this game. And I know that Ryan and I get a lot of the praise. A lot of the praise belongs with everybody on the team. And everyone's put in a lot of work to make this happen and make it happen well. And I think I can speak for everyone, though, in that we couldn't be happier where the game is at. And yeah, you talk about the notes on the back of a napkin. I have files that I've kept around since when I first started on it. When my boss first came to me and was like, hey, do you think we could do a Disney trading card game? And I'm like, yes, you can make a trading card game out of anything, but it kind of depends on what you want to do with it. And so, looking back at some of those, it's kind of funny where we started and where we ended up are 2 vastly different worlds. And I'm happy that we got there, right? We got to this place that we did, because looking back at some of those games, they wouldn't have worked at all. But I don't know. I'm always kind of a little confused on what to think with this. because it is just so amazing, right? Not everybody gets to go through this. It always kind of feels like it's not me that's going through this, because it is just such an amazing kind of path. And you even mentioned it, right? I've gotten to be a bit more of a world traveler. I've gotten to go to Germany. I've gotten to go to France. There's a lot of other travel that I've got coming up. Hopefully I'll be in Vegas too. And so it's pretty wild in all. And I am just so grateful with the community that we have, like always keeping it going really well, and it being so inviting to people. I go through a lot of the groups on Facebook and stuff where someone will ask a question, and I'll just look at the comments to see, was the question answered, and it's a ton of just, yeah, it's a ton of correct answers, which is great, but it's also a lot of people being very inviting about it, right? And so that really makes me feel special in that.
That's really cool.
I know I shared with you in the past, but I mean, you're talking about these moments that bring people together, and I was telling you about my son, like, his mom, like, we're divorced. They live in Idaho. I live in Las Vegas. So we haven't always had the closest relationship. I try the best I can, but Lorcana is something that, brings us together. Like, he will just call me up and we'll talk about Lorcana. Whenever a new card is revealed, he'll get on Discord and be like, I love this card or whatever. And it's just been something that's been really cool to really bring us together. So, yeah, I'm super grateful for that. I've definitely benefited from that. And even like going into this, I never would have guessed, but it's super cool.
Yep. Oh, so about that whole process of, the files in the dream to now, at what point going through that whole process, what was the point where you knew that it was truly something special with what you guys had created?
This one's a bit tough too, because I remember at D23 when the collector set was being sold, and nobody knew the rules. Nobody knew anything really, how to play, what things were. But Discord channels had already been created when the announcement happened. People were so excited to hear that there was a Disney trading card game. They were hopeful, right? There was a lot of people. Yeah, there was a lot of people.
You signed this at
Yeah, I see
D23
my
for
name.
me.
I see Ryan's. It looks like Bobby's or Shane Hartley's, and then
I think it's Ed's.
yeah, I think the Edgar is there too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's tough because D23 was a lot of collectors, a lot of Disney fans. So I was super nervous about the whole thing, right? Because, yeah, we had this massive showing, especially on day 2 and day 3. It was wild. But at the same time, it was this feeling of, well, they don't know the gameplay yet. And I was terrified because you've got all this wonderful art, right? We get to show off 7 pieces of just truly spectacular art, great package. And then the game has to live up to that when that comes out, right? If it comes out and everyone's just like, I guess I'll collect it. It was nerve wracking, I guess would be the best way. And so one of the times, like the first day, I believe it was, there was already a Lorcana Discord that was set up, and we were actually listening to people talk about all the facets of the cards and them trying to figure out all the things. So we heard all about, the lore symbols being rarity, or, how you played the costs, or what the goal of the game was. I mean, the strength and willpower, most people kind of figured right off the bat, but whether or not damage was persistent, we got to listen to everybody talk about it and get excited about all the different possibilities. And it was a lot of fun to us to listen to that. But of course, like at that point, you don't know, right? You know nothing at this point. We felt like Jon Snow. But as Gen Con rolled around, I have to say that I think that that was the clear eye-opening moment for me. And I'm usually very cautious about things. And seeing the line at Gen Con was just like, that's the moment where it's just like, okay, so we do have something going. People knew the rules, they knew all the cards, they were excited to be there, they really wanted to play the game, and they were willing to take their time out of their day, not go after all the thousands of other games that were going on at Gen Con, and wait in line so that they could get Lorcana for the first shot. That to me was when I really felt it. And my son had to stand in line too. So
He
my
was
son
not
waiting
too
in line
far
for
from me.
anything. What was that?
He was not too far from me in line. I remember seeing him standing there.
Yeah.
But just hearing you talk about it, I'm getting goosebumps just even thinking back to it. And I will say, like you were talking about, you'd go into the Discord and see what people were saying. There's probably like 4 to 5 different iterations of this game that we came up with. We're like, these could be the rules, this could be the rules. And I will say too, that was one of my favorite times, like, because the game could be anything. Like, and we were just coming together and bonding over this game, and we were analyzing every single like pixel of the card. But I will say, the hype lived up to the expectation. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Disney
That's what I
Lorcana
was gonna
delivered.
say. Yeah, when we finally got the rules, and then we were able to start like doing a little bit of testing with the few cards we had. I don't know about everyone else, but I was like, oh, this game is fun. This is cool. I mean, all this energy that we had as a community put into this game of trying to figure it out and enjoying the art and everything else we could do up to that point, at least for me personally, was completely rewarded with the way the game played. And I mean, obviously, I'm still like knee deep in playing it, and I'm playing 2 set champs this weekend and everything else. And I mean, it worked. So I guess well done is the thing to say to that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm very proud of what it got, where it got to, and how much fun people are having with it.
Yeah, I so clearly remember where I was when we got the rules, and getting those rules is what turned me from just a collector into, I actually think I could play this game. Like, this doesn't seem too far above me. I feel like I can actually approach this as a player, and I'm so glad I did.
That's awesome. Yeah, we definitely wanted to make sure that everyone who felt like they wanted to try to play the game could get a hold of it and play. And so
Absolutely. So it actually leads really well into our next question of, I think one of the things that Ravensburger is really doing to set Lorcana apart from the crowd is that this overall family friendliness, not just from the content of the cards, but even just the approach of the game. Like, I've heard stories of families playing the Ursula's Quest with their young kids who are maybe too young to understand the cards, but they get to flip Ursula's cards, and that helps them feel included as a part of the family. So now that you've gotten a chance to kind of be to multiple conventions and major tournaments, you've probably seen the data of that, specifically just even in the attendees there. So in your experience, how is Lorcana doing in connecting with just kind of that family group as a crowd?
I think really well. We've tried out various ideas. We've tried different formats with different groups. I know at Lil that we had um, kind of a family 2v2, so one parent, one child got to play, and that went really well. And I think that there's things that we've done really well, but there's a lot of things that we want to continue to try to figure out and improve and make better. And so there are a lot of things beyond the game that we're working on to try to increase that. So we hope that we'll have some things in the future that will be just as exciting or more exciting for families to sit down and play.
Well, and not just family friendly. I will also say too, like, it's just a very inclusive game. I mean, I see people of all colors and stripes at my local game store when I'm there, and I think that's okay. I don't have much experience playing other games, okay, so maybe it's the same elsewhere, but I will say, like, at least at my local game store, it's awesome to see the different people that are there, and also the crowd that's growing online. It's truly incredible.
Yeah, again, it goes back to community, right? Everyone's been very welcoming, and because the majority is so happy to just share Disney and Disney excitement with people, that it just brings in such a great crowd. It's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, in closing out the segment here, is there anything you wanted to say or share with the community? Like anything you're dying to get off? You've said a lot. You've talked about the design process. But is there anything that you're like, I just want the player base to know? No. I'm not asking for like, give us some juice here. I'm just saying, like, you guys are awesome. I don't know. Is there anything you wanted to get off your chest here?
I mean, I think the big thing for me is just to thank you. Like, I really mean it. Our player base, our community is great. I love how approachable they are for anyone to just come in and ask questions. And I love the fact that they're so excited for the game. And they want to help other people learn how to play. They want to get their friends to play. They want to do all these things. So they're really passionate. They're really approachable. They're really friendly, and it's across the world. Being in Lille and having people that were so happy to just help their opponent play the game, and even if they get completely beat in a competitive event, they were happy because they got to just enjoy playing Lorcana with them. So it really is just a massive thank you, and I really mean it, to our players and community.
That's great. And I think we'd all echo that sentiment back to you. Thank you for bringing us this. You and the team. I know it's not just you, but thank you, all of you, for bringing us this amazing product, this amazing game. I mean,
appreciate it.
Look, I'm sitting here with James and Adara and yourself, and I never would have met you guys otherwise. I'm having something that I can bond with my son over, and like just the connections that Lorcana has generated. It's priceless.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, do we have any ending segments, or is this the end, James? Adara?
I don't think we have any. I mean, we could have asked Steve some Disney trivia, but I think after watching all those movies, maybe it would have been just a little too easy. We should do some other kind of trivia sometime.
I talked the idea of doing like a Lorcana trivia where I'd like read the ability of a card and have you name it.
That might be a little harder than you think, actually, because those final names come into play a little bit later, and so and even the wording kind of shifts a little bit sometimes. I hope that I would be pretty good at it.
There.
He also has more cards in his head than we do. Like,
yeah,
we got 4 and like a third set going on in our heads. Like, he has way more than that. I feel like that's not fair.
It's always amusing when I have to read a card across the way from me when I'm playing. It's like, what does that do again? Because the art is different than I remember, or the ability is worded slightly different. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I remember this one.
Now, I know Jared's always a little bit shy about asking about this, but when are we getting more of this boy? Our boy Flounder.
He's just waiting under the sea.
I've carried this with me since Gen Con. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, I have a Flounder in my phone case, and it's been with me since last August.
I can also confirm for those on the podcast, it is also in a sleeve inside of his phone case. For people who just had like a connection at that fact.
It's extra protected.
So I do have to ask, like, why Flounder? Like, what is the connection with Flounder?
Nobody knows.
Okay. Is it okay for me to venture into other IPs here to make a comparison?
I don't see why not.
For me, it's kind of like the Bidoof of Pokemon. Like, it's just this cute, harmless like creature. And my original intent was to be like, you know, you probably remember those memes where I had like 2 flounders or 3 flounders, and I say greater than Maui, and
Yep.
just meme. So like that tickled my funny bone, and then it just became a thing, and it's
All
run
right.
ever since then. Because look at him, he's so harmless, and yet he can take down a demigod with 3 of him. So
That's all it takes is
my
just 3.
flounder.
So I think this is another great example of if you have a community that's willing to run with something, things can blow up out of proportion than what you originally thought. Like this started with Jared just having this fun love of just like this lovable character that was so simple, and having like a following of people and a community around the Citizens of Lorcana podcast just kind of blew that up.
I never would have guessed. In fact, the very shirt that I'm wearing, I had somebody design this for me and give it to me at Gen Con. I don't think I wore it when I was there, but it's somebody took some of my memes and put it on the shirt.
This is the way.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm repping Team Flounder right here. Anyway, all right. Well, you know, at this part we usually ask people where they can find you, but I'm just going to thank you for your time, Steve. We really appreciate you coming on. I know you're busy. I know you've got a family. I know you've got some miniatures to paint and games to design here, but we really, truly, greatly appreciate you taking time to join us today.
Yeah, I'm just happy that we finally got to make it happen.
Awesome.
Thank you, Steve. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And with that, we will see you next time.